Hey guys, OgreBarberian here again, and I had another special request. Today we are going to take a look at Siren Assassin of the Deep. So Siren is a physical striker that is a mystic and likes bleeds. So obviously, naturally, I love her. Uh, as you can see, her Gear 11 stats. She ends up with 112 speed at max and 47% crit chance. It's quite nice, actually. So let's go ahead and take a look at her skills real quick. So, Vicious Constructs, damage to an enemy, apply 4 bleeds if the target is bleeding. Keywords there, if the target is bleeding. So, Siren can meet this on her own. She doesn't necessarily need anybody else along for the ride to apply the bleeds. It is nice if you do have another bleeder along, but she doesn't necessarily need it to be effective. She's pretty effective on her own. Legendary upgrade for this, 40% chance to use Dagger Deluge if the target is bleeding. So, that's a pretty good upgrade. You're going to want to take that one kind of early, probably. I think I took it second. So, and it does pay off. That 40% chance does proc quite a bit. So, next up we have Dagger Deluge. Damage to an enemy, apply 5 bleeds to the target. Now, the really nice thing about this move is that it is on a 1-turn cooldown. So you use it, use something else the next turn, and then be able to use it again. So this is your primary source of applying lots of bleeds. It does really good damage, and because of her high crit chance, it does crit quite a bit. So the legendary upgrade number 1 is 2% true damage per bleed on the target. The second upgrade is to enrage the target. Now, I want to point out that the 2% true damage per bleed on the target is very, very, very effective at removing Deathstroke's awareness, because each one of those 2% proc individually. So in just using Dagger Deluge, you can remove up to 6 awareness with those true damage between the bleed, the attack, and all the true damage that she would deal. So she can get a lot of true damage through, and she'll still damage Deathstroke just a little bit. Now, she obviously is a mystic, so the damage isn't great, but you do remove all the awareness and damage in. So if this is the first hit of the match, and he had 5 stacks of awareness, hasn't practiced passive yet, has it full health, you'll remove all the awareness, damage him, proc his passive. Right then and there, nothing else has to be done. I love it, and it's amazing. Highly recommend getting this upgrade as early as you possibly can if Deathstroke is your problem. Alright, and then we have Zebel Fury. Light damage to enemy, 5% increased damage per bleed on the enemy team, max 100%. So if there's 20 bleeds on the enemy team, this is going to do 200% damage. That is a lot of damage. Now, the legendary upgrade for this is apply 1 to 2 bleeds on the enemy team. I'm not really sure what the percentages is for each one, but it seems like more often than you'll get the 2 instead of the 1. It might be even, I'm not 100% sure. But this is definitely, most likely this is going to be your first upgrade if you're planning on using her in a bleed composition where everybody does bleeds, because this is what feeds the rest of your team, because it applies a bleed to everybody. It also feeds her passive, Shifter, which she'll gain an evasion up when an enemy takes bleed damage, and a 45% chance to gain an extra evasion up. Now, so you'll gain 1 to 2 evasion whenever anybody takes bleed damage. That is important because it is how she stays alive. She is a very squishy character because she's a striker. She does not want to take the damage. Her legendary upgrade for this is a 50% chance for those to have duration +1. They only have a duration of, I believe, 2 turns, might be 1 turn. So having an increased duration is handy, don't get me wrong. But this isn't an upgrade that you necessarily want to take early with her. L3, L4 is probably about where I would take it. I don't think I would take it before that. That's just me. So, let's go ahead and take a look at some compositions. Alright, so this is the OgreBarberian special. This is actually the team that I typically run in PvP. I use Cheetah Lead, Lobo, Chemo, and Siren. I do have other bleeders that are up and available, ready to run, but I typically have found once I got Siren to gear 11, she was very, very good on the bleed comp. She does a lot that the team wants her to do. She does the high damage, she eats through the awareness, she just stacks a bajillion bleeds, especially if you have her legendary 1 where it procs the dagger deluge to 40%. She can stack ungodly amounts of bleeds very quickly on characters. Uh, Between her and a couple other characters, I have seen a character go from full health to 0 at one point because they had damage immunity, and it wore off, and then they just died. So it was very interesting to watch that happen. um, so don't be afraid to use her on a bleed comp. She obviously is very good for it. They feed her into her evasion stacks. Uh, I'm just going to go over some additional bleeders. You have Aquaman, King of Atlantis, has his bleeds on his trident and his basic. So he likes Siren as well. Dr. Poison also loves bleeds. She loves that Siren can spread everybody a bleed very quickly because she likes her gas grenade to deal more damage. Joker damage goods. I haven't managed to get him legendary yet, but once I do plan on putting him into my bleed teams because his legendary basic also applies bleeds to the additional damage on the AoE. So eventually, it'll happen. And then you got Red Hood, Bizarro, and Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing has to have an upgrade on his legendary third ability, Verdant Coffin, to actually be able to apply bleeds, but he's pretty good at it. Once he does, stacks 5 of them. Bizarro can stack 1 to 3 bleeds on enemies with his Flame Breath. And then, of course, the Red Hood can stack bleeds with all of his moves because of his passive, giving him up to 60% chance to stack a bleed on anybody when he gets hit with damage from him. So there's no particular order to these. These aren't like actual team comps. I'm just going over all the different bleeders and people that work well with her real quick. Vixen applies bleeds with her Rhino charge. Also stuns if it's legendary, so eventually I'll get there to that one as well. Robin, if he's invisible, can stack a bleed. Whoops. See, I don't even like Robin. But anyway, he can apply bleeds with his Nichiryu if he's invisible. Stacks a good chunk of them, but it takes forever and he has to be invisible, so he's not the greatest. His team leader ability is actually pretty good for her, though. All things considered, she doesn't mind being invisible. And then I threw World's Greatest Detective Batman in here because his ability to reduce the cooldown of all moves. The Zebul Fury is on, I believe, 3-turn cooldown, so it's kind of a longer cooldown. But the Dagger Deluge being on a single turn cooldown, you can use Dagger Deluge with Siren, use Batman's ability, and then she'll be able to use Dagger Deluge again. So it's a great way to stack damage and get those true damage stacks through real quick on enemies that are harder to take down. You can also purge off debuffs and different things to help Siren out in general. So, and then of course we have the Evasion special. Now, there's not a lot of characters with evasion, but Siren is one of them. Batgirl likes characters when they evade. Harley Quinn likes to evade. Huntress likes to evade. Siren can evade pretty good. And again, she doesn't have to have another bleeder on the team. She's perfectly capable of being the only bleeder on the team. So it's just a little extra damage for her. She does pretty good damage even without the bleeds. So, but unfortunately, I don't think I came up with 6th comp. Nope. So that's where I'm going to end. What do y'all think? Leave a comment, like, subscribe. As always, enjoy and grind on.